for all of us.
Now, we've all the latest stories with the ITV Lunchtime News.
The chilling moment, Czech police confront a gunman in Prague. Body camera footage shows armed officers storming a university building in pursuit of the shooter. As the first of his victims is named, a teacher, one of 14 people he murdered. We're live in Prague this lunchtime where chilling details about the killer are revealed, also this lunchtime. The backlash over the government's immigration U-turn. British teenager Alex Batty, who went missing for years, explains why he came home from France as the police begin a criminal investigation into his alleged abduction.
From the past few years, I could envision my future few years, and it really wasn't the way forward.
The COVID Christmas as cases double in England and Scotland. What's the doctor's advice? And Kate Carroll's The Princess of Wales joins pop royalty for the festive season.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. More shocking detail has emerged this lunchtime about the Czech Republic's worst ever mass shooting. Czech police confirmed a teacher was among the 14 shot dead by a student who went on a murderous rampage at Prague's Charles University before taking his own life. He's been named in the Czech media as David Kozák and had an arsenal of ammunition. We'll be live in Prague with more detail on that in a moment, but first, Carolyn Lewis has the latest.
This was the dramatic moment armed police stormed a university building where a gunman had opened fire. Today, the chilling details emerged of what has become the worst mass shooting in Czech history. When officers arrived, they believed the shooter, named locally as 24-year-old student David Kozák, was somewhere on the upper floors, earlier seen shooting indiscriminately from the roof. But in the search, they found his body with piles of ammunition. As police closed in, he had turned the gun on himself. The Czech Republic, today a country in mourning, a collective grief as people try to come to terms with yesterday's events. Instead of Christmas lights, candles now light the streets to remember the dead.
It touched me very dearly, this horrible situation. I felt that I had to come and feel with the victims of this attack.
But everybody should just get together and say, don't let this to be a norm.
The Czech Prime Minister among those who had gathered to pay their respects. Police say they have identified those killed in yesterday's shooting, all of them Czech nationals. The university confirmed this morning among them was Dr. Lenka Hlavkova, an eminent music scholar and director of the university's Institute of Musicology. Many of the injured remain in hospital. Authorities say 3 foreign nationals, 2 from Saudi Arabia and 1 from the Netherlands, were among the wounded. Last night, police scoured the shooter's home in search of a motive. It's believed he had killed his father before the massacre. He's also suspected of murdering a man and his 2-month-old daughter a week ago. Tomorrow will be a national day of mourning in the Czech Republic, a country left reeling from this horrific attack. Caroline Lewis, ITV News.
Well, let's go live now to Chloe Keedy, who is in Prague for us this lunchtime. And Chloe, a nation very much in shock, and also alarming details emerging now about the killer.
Yes, Lucrezia, that's right. We learned a lot of details from that press conference this morning. Police say they received a call from a woman in a village called Hostonia, just outside Prague, who said that she'd had a text message from a friend, and that friend was suicidal and then stopped responding to messages. Now, it's believed that friend is the shooter, who's been named locally as David Cossack. When police went to his house, they found a man there dead who is believed to be his father, and there was still a heavy police presence outside that house last night as they continued to search there. They say they then received information that he had made his way to Prague to the Faculty of Arts at the university, and he was actually on the roof of that building behind me when police confronted him, and at that point he shot himself. I've just been speaking to 3 students who were inside the building when that attack started. They say they were in their classroom having a lesson when they heard lots of shouting, people saying that there was a man with a gun and that they should barricade themselves into their classroom. They say when the police did arrive, they then escorted them out of the building. They had to make their way down several flights of stairs. And they said it was incredibly scary. When they got out here into the square, they said they could actually hear shots still being fired inside the building. They all said they feel very lucky to have escaped with their lives, but they were clearly still very much in shock.
Oh, of course. All right, Chloe in Prague, thank you. Well, next here, the Prime Minister is facing backlash from some of his own MPs after a U-turn over his plans to limit immigration. Rishi Sunak has backtracked from proposals to sharply increase the minimum income you need to earn before you can bring a foreign partner or spouse here, less than 3 weeks after announcing the policy. At the moment, you need to be earning just over 18,500. It was meant to go up to just below 39,000 by next spring. And that's now been cut to 29,000. Our political reporter, Jasmine Cameron-Chilishi, is at Westminster. And Jasmine, this has provoked quite a row within the party, hasn't it?
That's right, and given how divisive the issue of legal migration is at the moment, it's pretty striking how the government chose to announce this while MPs are in their constituencies and it's recess and just a few days before Christmas. Now, ministers say that these new changes will get the balance right between giving people time to prepare and also reducing net migration. I've spoken to a handful of Tory MPs this morning on the left of the party. They've welcomed the proposals. They say they're sensible, but I've also spoken to Jonathan Gullis this morning. He's part of this new Conservative group who are on the right of the party. He said that he's been deeply disappointed by these new changes.
None of this was mentioned. The current changes now, the sort of stagnation, essentially, of the policy. We didn't see any of that announced initially. And obviously with MPs, on the people like myself who have been pushing for us to go further and harder to get net migration figures down, we were told this was coming out there. We went and defended it and supported it in the chamber. And ultimately, we've had the rug pulled from underneath our feet. I just don't think it's good enough.
So we already know that the PM's expecting a political fight in January when the Rwanda legislation returns to the Commons, but it also sounds like MPs are gearing up for yet another battle over legal migration. And there's also been a little bit of frustration from some of these key sectors this morning that are impacted by the government's new changes. I've been speaking to representatives from the care sector this morning. They've welcomed the fact that there's a bit more clarity, but they say overall these new rules will still negatively impact the sector, which has vacancies of upwards of 100,000. So at the moment, the PM's in a really uncomfortable position because far from dampening tensions over this issue, it seems like these new changes have only further frustrated both his MPs and key sectors yet set to be impacted.
OK, Jasmine in Westminster, thank you. The police have begun a criminal investigation into the alleged child abduction of 17-year-old Alex Batty, who went missing while on holiday in Spain at the age of 11. He told the Sun newspaper he decided to come back to Britain from France because he wanted a better future. Ian Woods has more.
Being back with my grandma feels quite surreal.
6 years ago, when Alex was 11, his mother and grandfather took him on what he thought was a holiday to Spain. But it became an extended alternative lifestyle. They led a nomadic existence in first Morocco and then France. This was one of the places they stayed. By the time he was 14, Alex says he was working in construction, painting and renovating to earn money to eat. Alex told The Sun that he began to have doubts.
I started weighing up the pros and the cons from each lifestyle. And after couple of months of contemplation, I realised England was definitely the way forward.
His grandmother is his legal guardian until he turns 18, so earlier this month he began making plans to run away, to return to her home in Greater Manchester.
What do I need to pack? Don't show any sort of indication that I'm leaving. And my thought was to write a note. So I wrote a note to my mum, told her how much I loved her, how much I appreciated what she had done for me. I didn't want her to worry about me. I didn't want her to worry about herself. And saying goodbye, really.
He was picked up by a van driver on this road in the early hours of the morning. He initially claimed he'd been walking for 4 days, but now says he exaggerated the distance so the police would find it harder to go back and find his mother. A story that his grandfather had died recently was also untrue. Even though he lost much of his childhood, he understands their decision to take him abroad.
They thought about the present. They didn't think about the future. Okay, yeah, I was safe and I was always healthy, but no social life, no meeting people my own age, kind of always being isolated.
Alex told The Sun his mother was a great person, but not a great mum. Ian Woods, ITV News.
Well, after a year of rail misery with train strikes, came the news today that rail fares in England will go up next year by almost 5%. Labour has called the hikes brutal. Carrie Davis is here with more. And Carrie, the government's saying this is actually a good deal for passengers.
Well, they're going up again, as they do most years, but it's never good news to hear that, is it? And regular rail passengers won't need reminding that the last price rise was the largest one since 2012. But the government is keen to point out that these increases could actually be a lot worse. The Department for Transport is capping the increase for the second year in a row. In the past, these price rises have been based on inflation figures from July, so in theory, the increase next year could have been as high as 9%. Having said all that, finding out that yet again you're going to be spending more money on transport, just not something that people want to hear.
I'm travelling very often from Cambridge to London, and the price that I have to pay is really high, so that's bad news.
It's just a one-off for us, so it doesn't really affect us too much. No. And I commuted for 30 years and they went up every year. Yeah. So I'm quite used to train fares going up.
Well, Labour claim that it's been a year of record delays and cancellations. The Shadow Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh, she's called these proposals an insult to millions. And rail watchdog London Travel Watch, they're calling for ticketing reforms to make travelling on trains more affordable and more appealing to the public. But the Transport Secretary, Mark Harper, has called this cap a significant intervention by the government. He says that the changing work patterns mean that railways are still losing money post-pandemic. That means they need subsidising, and so without these increases, the rails just wouldn't run.
All right, Carrie, thank you. And there's little Christmas cheer when it comes to the economy. It's far from fizzing, it's pretty flat, and we could soon be in a recession. Between July and September, it shrank by 0.1%. So what does this mean for us as we head to the shops for some last-minute shopping before the big day? Well, our Wales reporter, Rhys Williams, is in Cardiff for us this lunchtime. And Rhys, cheer or fear on the high street today?
Bit of both, I think, Lucrezia. Certainly people in the festive mood at this queue for the butchers behind me, which has been pretty healthy this morning, but lots of people in that queue as well are saying that things are much tighter this year. Now, there's been concern about the UK's sluggish economic growth for some time, but the country's managed to avoid a recession so far. But with today's downgrading of the economy in the last quarter has certainly increased that risk, because if GDP shrinks for 2 quarters in a row, then the country is considered to be technically in a recession. So pretty gloomy news. However, there is a glimmer of hope, which is that last month retail sales grew stronger than expected as shoppers made the most of the Black Friday bargains and buying Christmas presents. Many of the shoppers I've spoken with here today, though, said that they will be cutting back on some non-essential items.
It's hard. Obviously, the economy's hitting everyone. Obviously, going normal shopping is hard because the amount you spend is totally different. You always want to sort of splash out a little bit at Christmas, but yeah, I have definitely cut that back this year.
Is there stuff in particular? Is it the food shop's a bit smaller?
It's more the kids' presents, really.
You know, everything is so much, costs so much, especially for children to buy presents and stuff, and food has gone right through. So.
Now, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, says that the economic outlook should not be dampened by these figures. The medium-term outlook, he says, is far more optimistic than the numbers suggest, thanks to that falling inflation we heard about this week. Whereas Labour Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said the figures show he and Rishi Sunak have failed to meet their promise of growing the economy. One thing's for sure, Lucrezia, the government will be hoping these extra Christmas sales can somehow stave off a recession this winter.
Yeah, let's hope so, Reese. In Cardiff, thank you. Next, to hug or not to hug, to meet or not greet. Those are the dilemmas many of us are facing this Christmas as COVID cases surge. They have doubled in England and Scotland since the start of the month, with about 1 person in 24 infected. And of course, many of us may not know we have COVID, dismissing it as a cold or flu or just another winter bug. Well, I'm joined now by GP Dr. Natalie Rout. Dr. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us this lunchtime. Listen, first of all, if we're not testing like we did during the pandemic, how do we know that cases have doubled in England and Scotland?
Well, there has still been a study, just like we had earlier, where 150,000 people have been reporting with lateral flow tests, the self-reporting ones. And so we've been gathering that data, which tells us that there has been an increase in COVID infections, unfortunately.
Certainly just on the trains and on the buses, you can hear a lot of people coughing, a lot of people with sickness, which you would expect at this time of year as well. But, you know, I guess we are in the festive period. A lot of people are travelling home. They're going to be visiting loved ones, maybe vulnerable people as well. What should they be doing? Should we be concerned, as we were during the height of the pandemic? Should we be moderating our behaviour at all this Christmas?
Well, I think what we have to be is sensible. And as we know, during winter, it's not just COVID we have to think about. It's flu, it's the common cold, it's norovirus, which causes vomiting and diarrhea. So as ever, we should all be practicing good hand hygiene, making sure we're washing our hands before we eat, washing our hands after we use the bathroom, really simple things. And let's not forget our etiquette, covering our hands and mouth, our sort of noses and mouth when we are sneezing or coughing. Simple measures that can actually really prevent the spread of infection. And when it comes to things like social distancing, I think, again, we have to be sensible. When we're feeling unwell, either too unwell to really go out, stay at home. And if you are meeting loved ones who are vulnerable, our elderly grandparents, babies, then I think it would be sensible to keep your distance.
OK, Dr. Natalie, all really good advice there. But very quickly as well, reports of a new variant going around as well. Should we be worried about that?
Yes, well, we do know that there's a new variant. It's not just in the UK, it's in other countries as well. What we can see so far is that it doesn't cause severe illness. So hopefully we're not going to see an increase in hospital admissions. We're not going to see fatalities. But as ever, we should be cautious. And if we're practicing all those measures like washing our hands, maintaining distance and being sensible, then hopefully we won't get to a stage where we are seeing lots of those hospital admissions. That's what we need to try and avoid. So as it stands, we know that it's on the rise. We know that it can cause similar symptoms to the flu and not be fatal, but we have to keep an eye on it and we need to be tracking those cases and making sure that we're on top of things.
All right, Dr. Natalie, as ever, thank you for the advice this Christmas. Thank you. And finally, the Princess of Wales was joined by pop royalty as she hosted her Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey. Beverley Knight, Freya Ridings and James Bay all performed, and the service was dedicated to all those who support children in their early years. And some children who've done some pretty extraordinary things received Kate's personal thanks. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, now on Kate's carols for Christmas.
Kate's carol concert at Westminster Abbey is now a firm fixture in the royal calendar, so for the third year running she arrived with her family for the recording. This was the first time Prince Louis has joined his older siblings at the event. It is a moment when the Princess of Wales can personally thank those she has worked with throughout the year. Among those invited to sing this year, Freya Ridings. Her version of Shakin' Stevens' Merry Christmas Everyone has always been one of her favourites.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
It's not the first time she's been asked to perform for William and Kate.
They asked me to play a charity event that they were doing in 2019, and I went out and I played my song called Castles, and I made a joke to Prince William saying, "Is that because you have lots of castles?" And he said yes. But it was funny, but just in general, I'm just really in awe of the charity work they do.
Prince Louis, sitting next to Mum, had a front row seat for Dad's reading.
All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth.
And those who have done some extraordinary things to help other children were shown how much they were appreciated.
I got tired at the bottom of Ben Nevis because there's so many steps at the bottom, and I was like, do I have to walk any more steps?
Oscar here is just 7, but he's climbed 12 UK mountains with the combined height of Mount Everest, and he did it for children in a local hospice for this reason.
Help them go on holiday and swim, that when their last moments they'll feel happy.
All the guests at Kate's Together at Christmas concert work in early years development, the main focus of the princess's work, to give children the best start in life.
There are so many wonderful professionals coming here today who all together collectively support those children between 0 to 5 years old and beyond that. And it's just absolutely crucial work. They're really important years.
Westminster Abbey is a 1,000-year-old church and the setting for the coronation earlier this year. Most of the events here are steeped in history, but this carol service is a new tradition that everyone seems happy to keep. Chris Ship, ITV News.
And Royal Carols Together at Christmas will be shown on Christmas Eve at 7:45 p.m. on ITV1, ITVX and STV. Now, just before we go, today marks the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night of the year. Crowds gathered at Stonehenge to welcome the sunrise this morning. From tomorrow, the days will start to get longer. And that's it. Charlene's back at 6:30, but from me, bye-bye. Happy Christmas.
Visibility may be low this evening as the cold weather hits. Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there. So generally it's an unsettled theme as we make our way towards Christmas Day. For this Friday, we can see a lot of cloud cover across the UK, and there have been some outbreaks of rain too across mainly northern parts. Now, as we go through the rest of the day, it's going to be quite blustery this afternoon. Still some patchy rain to come across parts of Northern Ireland into Scotland, down into northern England and parts of East Anglia. But elsewhere, it's a largely dry story. Some bits of brightness out there today. Quite chilly north of Scotland though, so here we could be seeing some wintry showers at times, but elsewhere temperatures well above average for the time of year. Highs up to around 11 or 12 degrees. Now, as we move on through this evening and tonight, that rain continues to pile in across the far north, and as it collides with that cold air, it could be turning to sleet and snow, so there is the risk of some icy stretches. But elsewhere, with all this cloud around tonight, that breeze is going to keep temperatures well above average. Lows there only down to around 8 degrees. Bye-bye.
Heinz Soups sponsors ITV National Weather.
What if you could send free chocolate in secret to someone special? Maybe that friend who always makes you laugh. Or just someone that needs a little lift. With Cadbury Secret Santa, you can send free chocolate secretly from a poster. Like this one, and this one. I'll be popping up all over the country. Look out for a poster near you.
One-year-old Biniam doesn't yet know that he's been born with a cleft. He doesn't yet know how it will affect his life if it isn't treated. But it won't be long before he finds out. Because soon he'll notice that no one wants to play with him. Forced to hide away Biniam will become completely isolated. He'll find it almost impossible just to eat, just to speak, and Biniam will start to believe his whole life will feel this sad and lonely. Right now, so many innocent babies need cleft treatment, but their parents simply can't afford it. This Christmas, will you answer a parent's wish and give their child a better future? Text Christmas to 70007 and give £5 via your mobile to Smile Train, or go on